Hello, and welcome back to Quiet Wisdom Stories. Tonight, I want to talk about something many people are afraid to admit: staying too long. Not staying because you're loyal, not staying because you're strong, staying because you're scared. Scared to be alone, scared to start over, scared people will judge you, scared you won't find love again, scared the next life will be worse than the one you already know. If you've ever been in a relationship that slowly drained you and you kept telling yourself, it's not that bad, they'll change, it's just a phase, I'm overreacting, I should be grateful, then this episode is for you. Because toxic relationships rarely begin toxic. They begin warm. They begin with charm, with attention, with chemistry. And then, little by little, they change shape, like water that turns cold. So slowly you don't notice until one day you realize you've been shivering for years. I stayed too long. Not because I didn't see the signs, I saw them, but I kept explaining them away. I kept negotiating with my own intuition. I kept shrinking my needs to keep the peace. And that's the trap. In a toxic relationship, peace is not peace. Peace is silence. Peace is you swallowing your truth so the other person doesn't explode. Peace is you walking on eggshells, calling it love. And if you've been living like that, I want you to know something. You're not weak. You're human. You're attached. You're hopeful. You're tired. But hope, without boundaries, can become self-destruction. Tonight, I'm going to tell you what staying too long cost me. What it did to my mind, what it did to my body, what it did to my sense of self. And I'm going to tell you what I wish someone told me earlier, because there's a difference between patience and self-abandonment. There's a difference between forgiveness and permission. There's a difference between commitment and captivity. So take a slow breath and let me start at the beginning. Not the beginning of the relationship, but the beginning of the change. The moment the love started turning into something else. At first, it wasn't obvious. It never is. If a toxic person shows you their worst on day one, you run. So they don't do that. They give you the best version first. They are charming. They are attentive. They are intense. They make you feel chosen. And for a while, you believe you finally found something special. But then, the small red flags arrive, not as emergencies, as little moments. A sharp comment that stings. A joke that feels like disrespect. A tiny insult wrapped in laughter. And if you react, they say, you're too sensitive. I was just joking. Why are you making a big deal? So you doubt yourself. You tell yourself, maybe I am too sensitive. And that's the first crack. Then the control arrives. Not screaming control, quiet control. They question your friends. They question your time. They question your loyalty. They say it's love, but it feels like surveillance. They want access to your phone, to your attention, to your schedule, and if you push back, they punish you. Not always with words, sometimes with silence. Cold silence, the kind that makes you anxious, the kind that makes you apologize. even when you didn't do anything wrong. Then the blame arrives. Everything becomes your fault. If they're angry, it's your fault. If they're stressed, it's your fault. If they act cruel, it's because you made them. And slowly, you start living like a translator. You translate your own needs into something small so they won't react. You translate your emotions into something soft so they won't explode. You translate your truth into a half-truth so you can survive. And you call that love. But it's not love, it's fear. I remember the first time I noticed I wasn't relaxed anymore. I was always checking the room, always listening for tone, always trying to predict the next mood. That is not love. That is a nervous system in danger. And here's the part that breaks people. You start missing the early version of them. You keep chasing the beginning. You think, if I love them enough, they'll come back. But toxic love doesn't improve with more love. It improves with boundaries and consequences. And most of us, we don't set boundaries because we don't want to lose them. So we lose ourselves instead. That's what happened to me. I kept lowering the standard. I kept moving the line until one day there was no line left and the relationship didn't feel like home. It felt like a test I could never pass. People talk about toxic relationships like they're dramatic, like they're only screaming or violence or big moments. But the most common toxic relationship is quiet. It's daily. It's slow. It's the drip, drip, drip that becomes a flood. What it did to me was not only sadness, it was erosion. I stopped trusting myself. I used to know what I felt. I used to know what I needed. But over time, I became confused because every time I expressed a need, it became a fight. Every time I expressed pain, I was told I was too much. So I started holding it in, and holding things in doesn't make you stronger. It makes you numb. I smiled more in public and disappeared more in private. I laughed. While feeling empty, I said, I'm fine. While living in tension, and eventually, my body started speaking. Bad sleep, tight chest, shallow breathing. That feeling like you can't fully relax, because you can't. Not when your nervous system is always waiting for impact. I became smaller. Not physically, spiritually. I stopped doing things I loved because it wasn't worth the argument. I stopped seeing certain friends because it wasn't worth the jealousy. I stopped being honest because it wasn't worth the punishment. And that's the most dangerous thing. Toxic relationships don't just hurt you, they train you. They train you to tolerate disrespect. They train you to accept crumbs. They train you to doubt your intuition. They train you to believe love should hurt, but love should not feel like fear. Love should not feel like walking on eggshells. Love should not feel like performance. And one day, I realized something terrifying. I had become someone I didn't recognize. I wasn't living, I was managing moods, managing reactions, managing conflict. And when you live like that, you forget your own voice. You forget your own dreams. You forget your own identity. That's why leaving is hard, because it's not just leaving a person, It's leaving a prison you got used to, and your mind says, at least it's familiar. But familiar pain is still pain, and that's where many people get stuck. They choose familiar pain over unfamiliar freedom. I did that for a long time. And now I wanted to tell you the moment that changed everything. The moment I stopped asking, how do I make them love me? And started asking, why am I accepting this? There's a moment when hope turns into self-betrayal, a moment when you realize you are not staying because you believe in love. You are staying because you are afraid of loneliness, afraid of starting over, afraid of being wrong. I reached that moment on an ordinary day. Nothing dramatic happened. No big fight, just a small scene, a small disrespect, the kind you've seen before. And suddenly, I felt tired. Not, I need sleep, tired. I felt soul tired. I felt the tiredness of someone who has been explaining away pain for too long. And in that quiet tiredness, I saw the truth clearly. This relationship wasn't getting better. It was getting familiar. And familiar is not healing. It's conditioning. I realized I had been waiting for someone to become kind. But kindness is not a phase. Kindness is character. And you can't love someone into character. You can't beg someone into empathy. You can't sacrifice enough to make them respect you. Respect is not something you earn by shrinking. Respect is something you require by standing. That's when I understood boundaries. A boundary is not a threat. It's not do this or else. A boundary is simply the truth. This is what I will allow in my life. This is what I will not allow. This is where I stop. And the truth is, toxic people hate boundaries because boundaries remove their power. A healthy person will hear your boundary and adjust. A toxic person will hear your boundary and punish. They will guilt you. They will mock you. They will call you selfish. Because when you stop being useful to them, they stop being kind to you. And that's how you know. So my turning point was this. I stopped listening to their words and started watching their patterns. Patterns don't lie. Words can, apologies can, promises can. But patterns tell the truth. And the pattern was clear. I was losing myself. And no relationship is worth that. Not love, not history, not potential. Potential is a fantasy. Character is real. And that day, I told myself something I needed to hear. If I stay, I will become a smaller version of me forever. That sentence hurt, but it also freed me because clarity is painful and beautiful. And now let me tell you what leaving taught me, because leaving didn't fix everything instantly, but it gave me something I hadn't felt in years. Air. Leaving was hard, harder than people think, because even toxic love creates attachment. Even painful relationships create memories. You remember the good days. You remember the beginning. You remember the moments they were soft, and your mind tries to bargain. It says, maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe I should try one more time. Maybe I'll regret leaving. But here is what I learned. You will always miss something, even when leaving is right. You can miss a person and still know they were hurting you. Missing is not proof you should return. Missing is just the cost of attachment. When I left, the first thing I felt was not happiness. It was grief. I grieved the dream. I grieved what I hoped it could be. I grieved the version of love I kept imagining. And then I felt something else, guilt, because toxic relationships train you to feel guilty for choosing yourself. They teach you your needs are selfish, your boundaries are cruel, your freedom is betrayal. But choosing yourself is not betrayal, it is survival. Slowly, my body started relaxing again. I slept deeper. I breathed deeper. I stopped checking my phone with fear. I stopped anticipating explosions. And in that calm, I started hearing myself again, my real thoughts, my real feelings, my real needs. And I realized I wasn't too sensitive. I was just human. I wasn't too much. I was just asking for respect. And I wasn't crazy. I was just living in a situation that kept denying my reality. That's why leaving matters, because staying in toxic love makes you doubt your sanity. Leaving gives you perspective, and perspective gives you power. I'm not telling you every relationship needs to end. Some relationships can heal if both people are willing. But the key is both, not just you. If you're the only one trying, you're not in a partnership, you're in a struggle. And struggles like that will age your heart. So if you're listening, and you're unsure, ask yourself this. Do you feel safe to be honest? Do you feel respected when you disagree? Do you feel calm more often than anxious? Because love should bring more calm than chaos. And now I want to end with a message for the person who feels stuck, the person who keeps saying, I stayed too long. If you feel stuck, I want to say something to you. You are allowed to choose peace. You are allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to leave a situation that is slowly killing your spirit, even if nobody understands, because people don't live inside your nervous system. People don't feel what you feel at night. People don't carry the weight you carry. So don't let outside opinions trap you inside pain. And please remember, love is not supposed to require your disappearance. Love is not supposed to cost your voice. Love is not supposed to make you afraid. If you are afraid to speak, if you are afraid to be yourself, that is not love. That is control. That is emotional danger. Now, maybe you're thinking, but what if I leave and I regret it? Let me tell you something older people know. You will regret some things either way, but there's one regret that is the hardest. The regret of staying so long that you forget who you were before. Don't let it get that far. You don't have to leave today. You don't have to burn everything down tonight. But you can begin with one honest step, one conversation with someone safe, one journal entry that tells the truth, one boundary you finally keep, because boundaries without action are only wishes, and your life is too precious to be built on wishes. So if this episode is speaking to you, I want you to breathe and remember, you are not trapped forever. You are not too old to start again. You are not too late to heal. You are not too broken to rebuild. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose the life that's waiting on the other side of fear. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this story helped you, leave a comment and tell me what part hit you the hardest. And if you want more quiet stories, more life lessons, and more calm wisdom, subscribe to Quiet Wisdom Stories. Good night, and take care of your heart.